Good morning. Morning. My name is Alec Morrison. I'm the warden of the county, and I will be chairing this public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to permit members of the public to make their views known to council by oral or written submissions concerning solely and only.
Speak up for some of us in the hallway that came here.
Come on in. I'll just go over it. The purpose of this public meeting is to permit members of the public to make their views known to council by oral or written submissions concerning solely and only the application before the council at this time. And this public hearing concerns the Annapolis County Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw. And that is the subject of the meeting. That is the subject on which folks may wish to speak. And I'm really happy to see so many people here today. It says to me that all of the people who participated in the over 3 dozen public meetings throughout the county in the last 2 years are continuing their interest. I received a number of telephone calls, and because of the manner in which the person who called me was speaking, I feel compelled to ask you to share your opinions in a respectful manner. Slander, outright lies, unfounded allegations will not be permitted. We welcome your input, but please keep in mind that any rude or disrespectful actions and or comments will not be permitted. All of the comments throughout the public hearing, and by comments I mean those that are reasonable, rational, and relevant, the 3 R's. All of the comments are to be addressed to the chair, that's me. I will provide an opportunity for public input and will ask that those who wish to speak will identify themselves and their communities so that their comments may be recorded in the minutes of these proceedings. Let me say just a few words about minutes. The minutes we provide are not verbatim. We read the sense of the comments and may include direct quotes, but they are not verbatim minutes. And when you speak, after you tell us who you are, what your community is, indicate whether you are speaking for or against the application. We will proceed by acknowledging written presentations, followed by anyone who registered to speak, followed by the general congregation. Council members will withhold their questions and comments until all of the public comment is heard. We'll move now to an information report by the Director of Planning and Inspection Services.
Thank you. It's great to see a good crowd here today. So I'm just going to give you some background and some discussion as to how we got to where we are today. Changes in provincial legislation in 2018 required municipalities to review and update the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw to ensure minimum and mandatory planning requirements related to drinking water, flood risk areas, agricultural land, infrastructure, and housing are met through the municipality. Additional items that were to be addressed in the MPS, or Municipal Planning Strategy, are listed in Section 214 of the Municipal Government Act and in the regulations respecting statements of policy in municipal planning strategies. In terms of geographical orientation, the proposed Annapolis County Municipal Planning Area covers the entire municipality, with a notation that we do have some secondary planning areas within those areas. The East End area, Bridgetown, Upper Clements, and Cornwallis Park. The proposed planning documents before us today also include our existing planning areas of Lake Katy water supply and Lawrencetown water supply. In 2022, Stantec Consultant was engaged to conduct a review, public consultation, and produce a municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw for the municipality. From May 16th to May 22nd of 2022, 11 public consultation meetings were conducted in a variety of communities with over 300 participants. The meetings consisted of an open house style where participants were encouraged to read display materials on the planning process, followed by a presentation with similar content, after which a question and answer period was encouraged. June 30th of 2022, 2 visioning meetings were held in Bridgetown, one in the afternoon and one in the evening, and in total approximately 75 participants. Stantec, along with municipal staff, provided attendees with the overview of the issues and opportunities that came from the public consultation that was conducted in May of that year. And several exercises were conducted to arrive at a vision statement that was incorporated in the proposed municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. And that reads, Annapolis County MPS will be a framework for growing a diverse, self-reliant, rural community protective of our land, environment, and heritage while welcoming to newcomers and visitors. After the 2022 consultation, Stantec prepared the draft municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, worked with municipal staff to review and revise all through 2023. In the fall of 2023, from October 3rd to the 18th, a second round of public consultation was conducted, and again, in 11 communities in the municipality, to present the draft documents for further public input. Approximately 310 community members were in attendance. In addition to the public consultation, staff were in contact with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing staff to ensure compliance with the provincial requirements, particularly the statements of provincial interest. December 14th of 2023, a planning advisory meeting was held at the Annapolis Royal Fire Hall with 27 members of the public in attendance. A motion was made by Planning Advisory Committee to recommend to Municipal Council to give first reading of its intent to adopt the county-wide municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw as presented. December 19th of 2023, Municipal Council gave first reading of its intent to adopt the planning documents and set a public hearing date of Thursday, January the 18th, 2024 at 10 a.m. First, the ad for first reading appeared in the Annapolis Valley Register, announcing the public hearing on January 4th, and the second ad was placed in the paper on January the 11th. And it should be noted that extensive advertising for public consultation took place that included inserts in our local papers, mail-outs via Canada Post, our social media sites, and of course our website. And we did some radio ads as well to get the word out that we were going through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'll now ask the clerk if we have written submissions.
Yes, board has got 5 written submissions, which I will read. Please forgive me if I don't stand because my knees don't work as well as that. My submission for public hearing of land use bylaws 18 January 2023 is submitted by Sue Skipton, West Dalhousie. I'm deeply concerned for how all this has transpired, been held, and its conclusion. There are still many questions to be answered and many community members that are not in agreement with what is going on. It started a long time ago now, 2021, with almost a year lapse where we heard nothing, then a final push to finish it with hurried meetings, some that were cut short and people ushered out before the meeting was to end. The last meetings with little to no knowledge had by the community, one meeting that people didn't know if it was still on or not, as most things had been canceled that day, but the meeting wasn't, and for some it was not fit to drive to get to that meeting. The very fact that when meetings resumed, those that were now at the helm had no idea they had started almost a year before. I know as I asked the question at a meeting as to why we hadn't heard anything in almost a year, I was told it didn't start a year ago, it just started. So big failing there. When the original plan was revised after meetings in communities, the paperwork did not reflect the map and the words were still on paper. Things like this had to be caught by citizens and put forward to have them corrected. Almost like if we didn't catch it, it would still be there in black and white. This correction was done literally hours before the meeting on January 10th, 2023. Trying to get information after the second community meeting and was told, send an email. An email was sent, not 1 but 3, but mysteriously the person who told me to email was no longer part of the committee and the emails not found. How are citizens to feel when things like this go on, and rather than follow up, things are just let go, questions unanswered? What? Maybe we would forget about them. Well, they weren't forgotten, and more questions asked, and information still not forthcoming. This has been a shamble of things happening, and public input was pretty minimal. Yes, we had public meetings, but questions that arose from those meetings left unanswered, and thus really making the meeting not as public as it should be. The first meeting being held, and then nothing till almost a year later, and misinformation on how many were at meetings. Questions that weren't answered, no follow-up. Then we bank into the last of the meetings that are held in one location, not community-minded, almost as if to curtail public input, but it was anyways, as only 5 minutes were given to speak. This is not public input, this is handcuffing citizens. There has to be much more effort put into letting citizens know what is going on. Much better way to get info out to people. The county says check the website, it is on there. It is not all on there. And if you go looking for it, you have to almost know where to find it, as search is so word perfect. Unless you have the perfect words, it comes up nothing found. There is a Facebook page for the county, but it is not kept up. Not everyone relies on computers and social media either because they don't have it, can't afford it, or simply don't want it. So in closing, the county says they want citizen input, but they want citizens that sit down, shut up, and don't balk. This is obvious in this bit about planning and rezoning, as you started with public input, then reduced it to a bottleneck and non-existent as you were hearing that the citizens were not happy and were fighting what was proposed. The lag of a year in between the first and second meetings come gladly of this as well. How are we to trust you to have our best interests when you run over us with steamrollers to get what you want versus what we want? Sue Skipton, West Dalhousie.
I might comment here that if that person was here and made that comment, that we are here today to discuss the document. We are here to discuss the plan and listen to your comments and questions about the plan. We are not here to discuss the process. Thank you.
The second submission is from Rebecca Wheaton and Kirsten Wilson to the Municipal Council and Annapolis County Planning Advisory Committee. We are again writing to note our concern about the proposed land use bylaws and the way in which household livestock is being addressed, particularly in the restrictions on the number of egg-laying fowl. I would happily attend the meeting to raise these concerns in person, but the meeting is happening when I work. As an educator, I cannot take time off to attend public meetings during working hours and would like my concern noted about the choice of date and time. We wish again to note the discrepancy between what residents of Annapolis County identified as major areas of concern and the proposed land use bylaws. In the 2022 survey, respondents stressed the importance of protecting our ability to have backyard livestock and supporting local food production. However, proposed section 4.15 seriously stymies the ability of residents to meaningfully produce food or to engage in small-scale agricultural endeavors. Given that Annapolis County consistently rates as among the worst childhood poverty rates in the province, curtailing the ability for residents to produce some of their own food, particularly in the face of skyrocketing grocery costs, is appalling and shows a serious disconnect between these draft bylaws and the realities of small-scale homesteading. In section 4.15, in which the numbers of animals, including all egg-laying fowl, rabbits, and pigs, cows, or horses, are lumped into categories with seemingly arbitrary numbers assigned to how many are permissible. For egg-laying fowl, the number is restricted to 25, regardless if one has under an acre or over an acre. Chickens, for example, require 4 square feet of space per bird in a coop or a little more in a run. Provincial regulations are at play restricting how many birds a family can have, as well as how they're kept. If on 1 acre lot, I wish to have a small egg-laying flock to provide food for my family and some neighbors, 25 birds would be reasonable, especially given that they molt seasonally, which causes egg production. However, if I also wish to have birds for meat, a process that takes a couple of months in the summer, I would be out of luck. If I wish to have 1 meat bird for my family for each week of the year, that would put me over the limit by double. It would preclude having any birds for eggs. What if I'm interested in preserving and improving the breeds in Nova Scotia? If I wanted to have egg layers and a small breeding program, depending on when I was hatching birds and when I was moving them along, I could be well over 25 birds just by hatching enough to have 2 flocks of 1 breed each. Again, this would increase our reliance on large-scale agriculture and breeders outside of our region and province. We are perplexed as to why egg-laying fowl are singled out in comparison to other types of livestock, cattle, pigs, and horses. Why can I have 25 fowl on a lot that is a fraction of an acre, but cannot have more than that on a lot that is more than an acre? A person with cattle in a similar situation could have triple the number of animals on an appropriately sized lot, and yet there is no adjustment for egg-laying fowl. We have outlined above why this is particularly disconnected from the realities of tending to poultry. There is again no logic to this number, nor does it reflect the wishes of the residents of Annapolis County. Many homesteads have small numbers of animals seasonally. Bylaws should point to the importance of maintaining standards for welfare as set out by the province, rather than determining arbitrary numbers. Given our many challenges with food security and the growing importance of food sovereignty, this disconnect between our priorities as citizens of this county and the proposed bylaws is shocking and disappointing. We are a rural place, and many of us have chosen to live here so that we could have a lifestyle in which we are able to feed ourselves and live closer to the land. Empowering us to feed ourselves also empowers us to feed our neighbors. It allows us to build better communities. We hope that this section of the draft land use bylaws will be reconsidered and rewritten, as the current bylaws would shut down an incredible number of homesteads and small-scale farms. It would be a massive loss to our county, our villages, and our communities. We're happy to meet further to discuss these issues and to answer any question you may have about the realities of homesteading. For further reading, there's some suggestions of books. Would you like me to name the books?
Please.
on just how much we can do on small-scale farms. Please review books such as Mini Farming, Self-Sufficiency on a Quarter Acre, Compact Farms, or the Everything Backyard Farming book, all available from our local libraries. Stories, The Backyard Homestead is also excellent and maps out precisely how we can become more self-sufficient on even small lots. We invite you to explore more deeply and welcome a follow-up conversation at any point. With regards, Rebecca Wheaton and Kirsten Wilson, residents of Lordstown.
That is a letter directed to the purpose of the meeting, which is the document.
Submission number 3 is from Dieter Sabin. I just want my land left for me to decide what I want to do with it, not the county. The county hasn't even given me a garbage can, but I pay my taxes. They don't do anything for me. I pay more taxes each year, and scared for me when I go to retire, how can I afford to keep my land I work so hard for? It is not for the county to decide what I do if I build a big farm or I build 50 houses on my land. That is for me to decide, and I am in the process of that decision now. So I'm sorry for the county, but I have plans for my 52 acres. Thank you. I wish I could be there, and I wish others knew about this and came together. Thank you, Dieter stated. No community stated. Submission number 4 is from Calvin Piggott of Center Lee. Dear Carolyn and Annapolis County Council, this email is to register my strong concerns regarding the final draft of the MPS and its treatment of wind turbine development. I would note that in a previous version of the draft, it included a number of possible designations for wind turbine development, which noted 4 are on the peninsula on the north side of the Annapolis River, the 5th is southwest of Bridgetown, the 6th straddles Thorn Road just north of its intersection with West Tallahassee Road, and the 7th is a large area in the center of the county between Highway 8 and the West Tallahassee Road that extends to the county's southern limit. It now seems all reference to designated areas on the South Mountain have been removed. As a landowner on the South Mountain, whose family was among the first English settlers in the 1700s, with a strong family connection to Annapolis County over many generations, I must strongly protest the short-sighted nature of this current draft in this regard. In an era of significantly increasing impacts of climate change and the strong need to dramatically reduce our dependence on fossil fuels for all purposes, Annapolis County should be expanding the scope of possible wind turbine development and not reducing it. I would therefore specifically request that the final draft reinsert the above noted lines at a minimum. As I believe these written comments will be read at the public hearing tomorrow, I will close these brief comments, but urge Council to reconsider this short-sighted approach to an otherwise forward-looking document. We need to be open to developing all of Annapolis County's natural resources in an environmentally sustainable way and not reducing our opportunities to respond to global priorities such as climate change by developing green sources of energy generation in a province which dramatically lags the rest of the country in this regard. Thank you for your consideration of these concerns, which I have discussed with long-term residents and neighbors, and to also share these views. Best regards, Calvin Piggott, Century Lee.
A comment directed at the cause for this meeting, the document.
And the last submission is from Matthew Piggott of Bridgetown. Dear Carolyn and Annapolis County Council, I'm writing to say that I am in favor of having municipal zoning which allows the placement of wind turbines on the South Mountain, or frankly any other area that is reasonable in Annapolis County. Thank you for hearing my concern, and please acknowledge receipt, which was acknowledged. Warden, those are the written submissions received within the specified time.
I know for a fact Michelle Palmer sent an email to you guys because he sent it to like 100 of us saying, making us all witness to the fact that he had a written email for you guys to read also, so it's kind of disturbing that it's not there.
We will now move to oral presentations from the floor, and the one person who has registered, Emily Hall, please. Sure.
Mine? going to read directly from this.
Tell us your community.
Yes. My name is Emily Clark-Hahn from Granville Beach. I'm going to quickly go over a couple issues with the plan directly. So the couple of things I wanted to mention are the putting limitations on just human habitation in general during a housing crisis, because I found that in multiple places during the document. Limiting livestock, as was mentioned in the other written submission. Also, for the low-density rural residential, there's too many restrictions on what can and cannot be done on their property, and some of them are in direct conflict with the list of acceptable home occupations in section 4.22. And also, I don't know enough about wind turbines or protecting the water supply, but it would be nice to see if there's documentation that says that there were professionals who know what they're talking about, who were involved in the plan, so that would be nice to see. I go on with more issues, but as we said in the last meeting, it doesn't seem to matter to the council if there's issues with the plan because they're willing to go ahead with it regardless of our concerns for the sake of progress, because admittedly they're being rushed by the province, and so they're trying to rush us along with them. I do actually, don't interrupt me. I know you'd like to stick to the plan itself, but the process is actually in the plan. If you look at the MPS section 742, it says that all the council has the right to extend the process more widely, require the development officer to notify all landowners by personal service or regular mail. It was flyers, not regular mail, that was there. Okay, let me see. Sorry, when I get interrupted, take a minute so you can deduct the minute from that because that's the way my brain works. I'm requesting that we go ahead and require more info on the advertisements, as it also says the council has the right to do in that section of the plan. Also, during the next steps from the last meeting, it said that it was required that 2 successive weeks of advertising were to be devoted to this meeting. I've been looking for advertising for this meeting. The first place I saw was on January 10th at planopolis.ca. Could have been there sooner. Nobody would have known. January 11th, it was on the municipal Facebook only 7 days ago. January 12th, the Reader, 6 days ago. That's not 2 weeks. And so I'd like to put that into consideration. And then I would like to just say some quotes from the last meeting because, let me go back here because I requested the minutes on January 2nd for the meeting on December 14th. And I wrote to the municipal clerk and she told me they'd be available in a few weeks and that I should write back in a few weeks. Okay, that seems like a long time because it was already January 2nd. She said there was a process, it had to be voted in. Okay, so I asked my counselor last week. She was unaware that any of this was voted in. Still didn't have the minutes. Last night, 4 p.m., I get an email saying the minutes were available a week prior. 4 p.m. on the day it's going to close and the meeting's at 10 o'clock the next morning. That doesn't give us enough time at all to review any of those submissions. And I'd like to know if any of the concerns from the last meeting were addressed at all whatsoever in the plan, or if we're just going to go ahead. Because I've got some quotes here from the minutes for those who weren't able to see them. Councillor Enso said, overall the plan has some potential work, but those things can be done following the first reading. Councillor Longmire said, we still consider items of concern. We take this seriously, what we've heard tonight. So I want to know what are the changes that have been made from what they heard that night. Then we have Councillor Connell, who's disappointed by the outcome and says plans are working documents. Anybody who wants to change a zone, there's a process to do that outside of the review. But at whose expense? Our own expense. Once the plan goes through, it's our own expense that these changes are going to be made. Okay, skipping forward. Everybody likes to talk about how it's a living document and that it can still be changed. Okay, let's not kill it. The deputy warden says it's a bit broad in places but restricted in other areas. Those are all just quotes from everybody from last time. Also, I read an article about the request to shrink council recently. The council responded that 400 people wasn't enough to make the change. But that's funny because 350 were enough people to make this plan in the first place. That's going to affect all of us. And then I just wanted to say one more thing, because after our last meeting, you looked at me and you said, tell us what you really think, why don't you? But I don't think you're actually ready for that, but I am just going to add a little bit. And I'd like to say that you guys were elected by the people, not the province, and I know from speaking personally with some of you, this was a rushed process. Yes, I'm talking about the process because it's part of the plan. And you guys are failing us by doing that. The previous council was aware of the need for public consultation since 2018. They failed us, and this will be your legacy too if you guys pass this, knowingly with flaws, just so that you can show the province that you're making progress. Is it though progress? Because I would encourage you to make your decisions wisely today, because Annapolis is watching you, and if you're not careful, we're coming for your jobs in October. All of your jobs in October. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. If possible, try to comment on the subject of the meeting. We'd like to hear, please, those who are against the application.
Excuse me, I'm registered to speak too, so I'm sort of like wondering why there's no note of that, and again, I'm going to bring back, and I'm hoping this is recorded in the minutes, that Michelle Palmer's email was not read off in public, so there's obviously a misdemeanor, some barrier here to whoever's responsible for registering people and registering the emails. There's clearly an issue. Would it be okay if
You registered before I did, I'd like to add.
My name's Lee Baker. I've been keeping up with on all these.
What is your community?
Sorry, Gordon. I live on the back Granville Beach Road there, just close to Port Royal on a big acreage. I've been keeping up with everything with the planning, but I'm a busy guy, so she sort of keeps me in the loop on everything. But now I'm at the point where I have to participate because I'm gravely concerned about the ability of this council to protect the rights of law-abiding, tax-paying property owners. This process is supposed to work alongside the public. It's not democratic to only give each person 5 minutes to speak about their concerns. You cannot address the behavior of the procedures of this council in 5 minutes, let alone address the issues from the proposed changes. As someone who's been following but not directly participating until now, I'd like to point out that the minutes from the previous meeting have not been released promptly. It's not transparent enough for me to move on to a second reading when the minutes from the previous approved reading were released last minute. The taxpayers should have a chance to review the minutes and contemplate our concerns. A grace period should be applied for this part of the process. It's our right to demand a transparent process, and this is not that. This council should make a motion to halt further readings and votes until we've had proper time to review the previous decision. I'm also frustrated that this council voted in favor of this plan and is moving forward to the second reading with so many people who are in clear opposition to the changes. We're in a housing crisis, and further restricting what we can build and the tolerance in our lots, it makes no sense. It's also directly opposed to the sitting provincial government's plan to encourage more affordable housing built in backyards and on private lots. Right now, they're offering grants to everybody, $25,000 to build accessory buildings in your backyards or to convert, oak buildings and stuff into affordable housing. We're also in a crisis of inflation in manufactured foods. People are choosing between healthy foods and gas to drive to work. We should be encouraging and incentivizing people to take the responsibility to produce and raise whole foods, not limiting the number of livestock and restricting greenhouses, which that does. It also restricts, this is not in my thing here, but many of this plan restricts home occupations. A lot of it's like, think about this, why would we restrict a home occupation in a rural, any residential zone to a consultant? And that does that in this plan. That's just one of many. Zoning is less of an issue in rural areas, but the housing crisis is happening right now, in part because there's too many zoning types and regulations that prevent Nova Scotian developers from actually developing. We must move away from over-regulation and let free markets and demand decide what is built on any given parcel of land. The councillors are repeating the statement that more of the public need to participate. I do agree with that statement on a certain level, but it's not true on others. This council does not need any particular percentage of the population to attend these meetings to appease those that do. In other words, what you all have to do is listen and work on behalf of the people who do attend and participate, and assume that the rest of the population will agree with the opinions of those who participated. It's not the job of the public to recruit extra participation either, which has been happening here, and all you counselors are responsible for this, not Emily to draw up flyers to make sure that people attend this meeting and go plopping them down. This is your jobs, to raise volunteers and to do whatever means necessary to make sure people come to these meetings. We all have enough to deal with in this crazy world. We shouldn't have to drum up, people here to these meetings. Another huge red flag to me is the councillors are stating that they are behind on the implementation of this plan, stating that it just needs to be completed despite major issues, that we can go back and fix things after it's passed. I'll remind this council it will be a much larger task, as Emily also pointed out, at our public's expense, to change bylaws back than it will be to just implement them properly the first time. Not implementing properly the first time is criminal negligence. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to leave this council with something to think about. Trust in government is at an all-time low. And I think a lot of people are not paying attention, and that the time will come sooner than later when all trust in government is completely lost. I want
Thank you
to all
Be super easy.
Thank you for those comments. We'll now call for comments against the application.
Right here.
Yes, please.
Hello, Mr. Morrison.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. I'll be simple again. As I've said from the very beginning, there's more praise in all the documents you've prepared than criticized.
Can you give us your name and community?
My name is Kevin Emery, and my community is anywhere in Annapolis County. On this side of Bear River. The only thing I'm going to talk about is, which of course Scott over here is dear to his heart, the single camp, the single accessory building on an acre or 100 acres. Ridiculous. And then the other, of course, is the food production, because I myself am a chicken breeder, and 25, please, all egg-laying fowl, whether the ducks or chickens, are just a time bomb and an experiment in death. You need to have more to have what you want, because they rotate through between predators and disease and old age and lack of production. So, again, as I spoke in the last meeting, people who were, and this was a response from not the council, but from the people preparing it, if you're going to prepare these documents, you should be a subject matter expert. If you're not a subject matter expert, you should not be defending these documents. You should be learning about them. And this is an opportunity for most of the councilors here know damn well about chickens and livestock. So they don't got to be told 25 is just some out of the ass number. So again, this document in whole has some very good things in it. But please, don't just glaze over it to meet a deadline. I know it's not the city council members today fault that you're behind schedule, because you all stand on the shoulders of people who came before you. And their lagging is now your problem. But to push this through to a second meeting or to an approval process without fixing some of the simple things in it before you do will save all of us the anxiety and cost of changing it in the future. Getting it right the first time is the cheapest path, even if waiting is part of it. That's all I gotta say.
Here, here, here. Very good comments. Thank you. Second call for persons against the application. Yes, sir.
My name is George Bruce. I live in Tuckerville. And I have to say that I'm not necessarily against or for, and I'm not directing my comment at any one person in this room whatsoever. I am frustrated, as we hear a lot of people's tone being frustrated, that we are following a timeline that a greater government, if we would call them that, provincially, is mandating. And I don't think that that is truly what we need. We need to have encouragement from our public to participate. I have been at every step from that first meeting that was in Bear River.
And I've seen your
I
trip,
have
yes.
been in every facet of it, participating from a sideline and watching. And what I'm seeing is no harmony. What I'm seeing are people frustrated And it's not to be taken out on any member in this room. We are being forced by the provincial government to meet something that we have never experienced before. And it's not what Annapolis County was rooted in or founded. We are not the kind of people that take direction from an outside source and make it happy. It doesn't work. Participation by the public, in my opinion, has been terribly disappointing. And I would say that doesn't mean that the public are satisfied with the project and going forward. So I think that as a whole, this process needs to cool. If there is a financial burden and a reward from the provincial government that makes the timelines of utmost importance, I would say that's not our major concern. Change such as we are going to face is a concern that those people that are in this room will all agree we are not ready for this change. Thank you.
Thank you for those relevant and reasonable comments, as you've done at all the other meetings. Third call, persons against the application. Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Westcott. I'm in Vancouver. I will say I'm against proceeding with the second reading at this point. If we follow the mainstream media, social media, sources of information, we are in an era of worsening housing crisis. We're seeing radical moves being made by governments at all levels, ranging from funding to actual purchasing of specific types of units that are not recognized in this particular document. Things like prefabricated housing, modular housing, expandable container housing. All of those have technologies associated with them which are not recognized in the particular documents that I've seen. Particularly, as an example, something like sewage waste. All of the requirements in the document are based on technologies, either septic or city sewage. They're now technologies that are available for off-grid type housing, or small housing that does not have to tie into existing infrastructure. Things like composting toilets, things like dehydrating toilets, things like incineration. We're building laws on technology that is now becoming, particularly given the crisis that we're in, difficult to implement. We are stretching the limits of the infrastructure that we have. We have alternatives that are available that are not being recognized, let alone addressed. I think that there's some further learnings that should be looked into and questions answered as to, do we plan for what we had 10 and 20 and 50 years ago versus what we have available today and what's going to be coming downstream in the very near future? How can we quickly respond to those types of changes without having to go in and rewrite these types of documents? Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well reasoned. Thank you. Persons against the application. Sir.
Hi, my name is Derek Wiles. I'm in Bear Breeze.
Yeah. How are you?
How you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I with you last evening.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
And I remember you saying when you said the majority of citizens. And I said, how many was that?
Well, that's how many people can show up at 10 a.m. in the morning when I work there.
Exactly, yeah.
Why that?
Very good point.
Anyway. I can't speak for or against this document. I haven't read into it enough. I just found out yesterday morning that this process was in place. I know a lot of landowners in other provinces that own land here. They have no idea that this was going on. So, I'd like to review it further to make a proper decision. And I really think that, every landowner should have been contacted and given all the information about these bylaws before this process is finalized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we send our taxes in the mail. Paper and letting everybody know.
Why wasn't it on CBC?
Maybe they'd all be here.
I get 4 assessment letters a year.
Do we need another break?
All right, the speakers for the application. Speakers for the application. Speakers for the application.
Maybe you need to say it louder.
Thank you. We will now turn to any comments or questions from members of council. All right. We will
Well, I'm
now-
not as scared now.
Oh, Councillor Gunn.
I'm just waiting for somebody else to jump in there. I ain't scared.
I'd like to thank Stantec and the Annapolis County planning staff for the job they've done on the planning of our county. I'd like to thank them. I attended all but 2 of the public meetings that were out there. And the public hearings that were held by Annapolis Planning. The concerns that were heard by Stantec and our planning staff have been compiled. And it has been your words, the citizens' words of Annapolis County, that they have had to work with. Everything you said is what they've compiled and they've put, and that's what creates this document. Maybe not you were there, maybe you didn't get hurt. I don't know.
Who said we should limit it?
I'm not the
Nobody barely knows about these meetings.
To one house on our properties. Who said that? You tell us who said that.
Not like that.
Put it on record. Who said we can only have 25 chickens? It's coming from the UN. Globalists.
Thank you.
Stantec is a globalist organization. They have no business writing laws that plan anything for Annapolis Valley.
Our citizens should be writing these laws.
You guys that hired them should be ashamed of yourselves.
Not somebody from outside. Thing you're proud of.
We'll continue with. Go ahead, Councillor.
I was going to ask the crowd if they were done interrupting, because we all let them have their say. We didn't interrupt you.
Is this an invitation for me to comment more?
No, sir, I'm not.
That's what it sounded like.
And I'm not sure who's all included here, but the long and the short of it is it was the citizens' words that they've had to work with. And that's the genesis of the document, are the words that they heard from citizens that attended these meetings. That's at all the meetings. The meetings were well publicized, folks. I'm sorry to say, if you missed it, I'm sorry.
Obviously.
But nonetheless, they were in the Valley Reader, all of them. I'm sorry, maybe some of you don't get all these publications or listen
You
to
sound
them
being so
all.
condescending.
But the long and the short of it is, they were
You're
out
being
there.
condescending right now.
They
Let's
were
get on
out
with your
there.
points.
And, well, this is my point. My
That
point is
they
quite
represent
simple.
you?
My point is quite simple, that notification was out there. The meetings were held, and it's odd that a lot of people showed up to these meetings, but nobody heard about it. So, you know, listen, I'm
Working
quickly.
with us or against us?
Please,
I can't believe
please,
this is ridiculous.
please,
Look at the faces he's making.
please.
Bro, like, seriously.
So, the genesis of the document, words, and then the direction of the provincial government. That's where this document has came from, folks. And we have to make some move on it. It can always be changed. I know some people will say, well, that'll be at my expense and the rest of it. Not necessarily. It'll be expensive to the county as well, all these changes.
Okay, Gregory to help us out.
Oh, and along with the short, I'm quite pleased. I'm quite pleased with the document, and I thank you all.
We're so glad that you're pleased on our behalf that you're pleased with the document, bro.
Okay.
I would like on record, because he said that the public said, based on public consultations, that the public wants restrictions to livestock. Who said it? I want the date and the time, the minutes of that meeting where somebody from the public said, oh, guys, I think it's a good idea that we restrict livestock and the ability for people to build housing. Show me where one person of the public said, hey, I think it's a good idea. We should restrict the ability for you guys to build homes in a housing crisis. Show us. Show us on paper where that was said, or you're a liar. You can't produce it.
Councillor Connell, please.
We've had secondary plans in our county for several years. And when I came on as a county councilor, I didn't believe in planning either. But over the years of being on some of those secondary plans, citizens do give their views on how they want to live in certain areas of the county. So if you're in a subdivision, people move there to be in a subdivision where there is no livestock, where there is bylaws, provisions. Other jurisdictions have bylaws that people have to mow their grass. And if they don't, they're fined. In BC and Alberta, if you don't mow your grass, you're fined. If you don't keep your yard up, you're fined. People move to those areas to live that type of living. Do I want to live in a subdivision? No, I don't want to live in a subdivision. I live in the rural community because I choose to. And I choose to buy a piece of land suitable. If I wanted 2 horses, I could have 2 horses. If I want chickens, I could have chickens. But I do not move in a subdivision and still want the same thing because people move there for certain things. Has the plans in the past always been perfect? No. Has people come forward after the plan was put in place and said, we'd like to do something different with this? And we went through the process, and some was corrected, some was talked over, and some was dealt with by the public of them plans. That's what they wanted. And I think over the years of having secondary plans, I think the people that have lived in those secondary plans are more than pleased on how the municipal bylaws and LUBs work. This plan came upon us because we had to zone all of the county, which we knew as councilors right off the hop, it wasn't going to be easy. Because I am no different than anybody in this room. Would I like to be able to tell everybody that walks in my driveway, I can do whatever I want because I own the property? I'd love that. But that's not how the process in the world is running. We are asked by the province to zone all of the lands in our county. We can take a year, we can take 10 years. Are we all going to agree at the end of 10 years, I'm very doubtful we would take it even after 10 years. We'd have people sitting in this room saying, oh, I don't agree with just that item. Are we going to make it correct 100%? No. And I'm not sitting here telling anything out of the source that I can make this plan perfect, because nobody in this room can. Times will change, subjects will change, people will change, the next generation will change. Are we doing the best? We've advertised the best we can. We've put it out there many, many times. I agree with a gentleman that said, oh, I'm here, but I didn't want to be here because I have a job. Well, we held night meetings. And you know what? Night meetings didn't have a third, not even a quarter of the people that are sitting in this room today.
They know about it, huh?
Yes, they knew about it.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they knew. So
Just like you showed up, we would have had a lot more people in this room.
27 people in December at that house meeting.
Please,
No changes since.
please, would you show the speaker some respect?
We did, and he's keep rambling, and there's no sense being made of it.
Okay,
They're
thank you.
restricting our ability to build homes in a housing crisis and feed our kids. Please address that. And I bet you if you change 4 or 5 things in this right now, the ability to restrict our ability to build homes, the livestock situation, and there's a handful of other things, would everybody in this room be quite as pissed off? No. How can you sit here and defend, and you over there, the ability to feed our families and our communities? How can you sit here? You're gaslighting us. That whole speech is gaslighting. I'm going to say it to the next person and the next person. If anybody else wants to get up here and just ramble on to try to fucking be complacent, excuse my language, I didn't mean to swear, I'm going to have the same attitude.
Could I say something, please? I live in Carlton Corner with my husband.
And your name?
My name is Lester Bardson. I live in Carlton Corner in Hilda Fitzrandolph's old house built in 1767 by people from Massachusetts, which is where we originally came from 40 years ago. Anyway, the point I'd like to make is this. I used to teach history. In the Middle Ages and the early modern period, towns have walls around them. And the wall clearly defined the urban area. What we loved about this area was that Bridgetown was a town and Carlton Corner was part of the country. And what Mr. Connell said encouraged me to add my quiet and humble voice to what's going on. The reason that people are upset, and the reason I've been tentatively upset, is I don't want to see Carlton Corner, except obviously you have the lane, but I don't want to see Carlton Corner concern itself with issues that belong inside the walls of a town. And I think that a lot of and this is why I didn't say I'm against the process, but I'm very troubled by it because I want to see agricultural land stay. You cannot replace agricultural land. All you have to do is follow 201 through Greenwood and then go past base until you come to Aylesford, where it turns into Route 1 again. And you'll see a line of about 20 in a row, old folks, garage, room, 1-bedroom places. And that's the kind of thing I don't want to see. I'm all for, I had apartment buildings as part of my lifetime. I want to see more public housing. And I agree, it's a matter of great concern. If I had 60 acres and I wanted to build something for my brother on it or something, and I can only build one thing, I see the point. But what I feel is the underlying issue I'm so concerned about is taking the rural character of a good chunk of the county. There's nothing more beautiful than a valley which envelops you and gives you a sense of cultural unity, and you're nurtured by it. And every time we do something to agricultural land, it took Mother Nature millennia to build up the base for the agricultural land and to put a bunch of string like you see on 201 before you get to Aylesford. To see that happening, that's what I'm fearful of. I can't follow all of this. I keep reading it and so on. And I talk Greek, but this is Greek to me. And that's
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's your Greek?
It's all right.
Hurry still.
I'd just like to, excuse my ignorance, this is the first of the
Your name, please?
Oh, it's Deborah Poole,
From?
Bridgetown. Well, I guess.
Are you inside the law or?
No, one government document says I'm in town, one government document says I'm rural. They choose. they can't figure it out. I'd like to know why this planning has come about. My concern is that I grew up here, I lived here. I lived next door to my grandparents. Each one of my mother's siblings had a house on my grandfather's land, wasn't subdivided. We grew up on gardens. Why is that being taken away from our children? That's my concern. Why can't I grow the food to feed my child healthy food like my grandparents did for their children? Like these are my issues. Why can't I put a house on our land for our son because there's no way he'll ever be able to afford to purchase one. He's 14 years old. We're saving already for him. We've been saving from birth for education. And now these are my concerns. We have 28 acres. And you're telling me that we can't retire there and put a unit there for our son to live on, or an apartment above, or whatever. But it's generational. This to me it seems like it should never even happen. Growing up here, like these things for rural areas. Yes, I understand for town. If you want to live in a town, of course you don't want chickens in your neighbor's yard. You're moving to that area. But for our rural areas, outside of these centers, it seems just like unnecessary, a lot of expense of government, and I don't understand why they've been implemented, or trying to be implemented.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm Michael Westcott, Granville Ferry. I think it's important to note that laws, as a general rule, reflect a point in time. There are things that happen before, there are things that happen after. Changes occur that require modification of the laws. I think we need to understand that. I think, though, from a process perspective, you're asking whether you should go forward with second reading. It appears to me that there is some level of consensus from the people that you represent in this room that might become a challenge, that there are things that need to be addressed. If this process, in fact, started 3 years ago, there are things that are embedded in the document as it exists now that reflect that situation. There have been some fairly radical changes in terms of housing needs. There have been some that have not changed with regards to the right to grow and to have animal husbandry on property. There have been things that changed. My sense is, I may be wrong, and you guys get to make this decision, but I think there is concern that there are some things that have happened between the initial mandate that was created to review this document and where it stands now. And I think there's a call that says that there are some things that are happening during that process that need to be reviewed and reconsidered in terms of where the document sits today versus where it may have been 2 years ago when it was initiated.
Further comments from council. Councilor Proust.
Thank you. I'll be brief. As Councillor Connell has alluded to, there are other existing zones that are in the county that are there, and I live in the East End. That's the one that I know the most about. I was a citizen member of the East End Planning Committee for approximately 10 years. I'm sorry. The East End Planning Committee, I was a citizen member on that for approximately 10 years before I was elected to council. Is it perfect? It's a constantly changing thing. During those 10 years, and while I've been on council, a number of people have come forward wanting to change this zone, that zone. Could they do this there? Is it possible for me to purchase that piece and do something different? And those have gone through. I'm not aware of any in the time that I've been on it where someone said, no, you're wasting your time, you can't do that. Come and speak, put your case forward, and we'll go from there. I'm not going to give you the name. Someone has asked for whoever said they don't want chickens. My area has a lot of R1 zoning, which is subdivisions, basically. Do I get calls? I have met people outside of some of these meetings. In Margatsville, the last one, two of my constituents came up to me, and I didn't retire to live on a farm. I retired to live in a subdivision. I don't want 5 or 6 chickens in my subdivision. We get rats, all manner of things. That's their viewpoint. We all choose to live, for the most part, where we live. No one issue is going to solve, or no one rule is going to solve everybody's problems, mine included, yours included. But this is where we find ourselves now. And we're doing the very best that we can, and I said I'd be brief, but I want to add my comments to Councillor Connell's said. In the East End at least, and that's where I'm from, we've made it work. Thank you.
Councillor Ansel, please. Hold on. Go ahead, Dustin.
Thankfully, hopefully everyone can hear me. First, I want to apologize for not being able to attend in person. I had a prior commitment, but it was very important for me to attend today. And I also want to thank people that showed up. So I was trying to talk earlier before Mr. Connell, but there was a lot of what he said that I do agree with. But there's just a few points that I just really want to bring forward because just like a lot of you, there was a lot of concerns that I had during this process, and as well as the plan. But there's been a lot of heated discussions, especially at the last PAC meeting, around the concerns of the chickens and the horses. I just want to point out that the plan we're talking about today is around the county-wide plan. And the majority of the county-wide plan is not R1 or R2. It is mostly made up of farmland and mixed use. And those areas really don't have the restrictions of some of the concern around the chickens or the livestock. I know that I'm going to be affected personally by this plan. I have one piece of property that will be part of the Bridgetown plan and one that will be part of this plan. And just like everyone else, I have concerns around feeding family and different things, and we're looking at the option of putting chickens and having different things. But fortunately, in both plans, I'll be in mixed-use areas. So I just wanted to bring that point up where if you're in R1 or R2, it's mostly subdivision areas. Is there work that continues to be done? Yes, 100%. But also I heard a concern around the farming areas and the protection of these areas. Well, I see this plan as a way that we can help protect these lands from being changed into areas. And we can keep farming the way that it is. And it was a prime example of the individual that mentioned driving up the 201. You can definitely tell when you leave outside of Annapolis County that things change. Well, and it protects those farming communities and the farming areas. Are we ever going to come up with a perfect plan? Absolutely not. But I feel that we're at least going in the right direction. And I know we're going to get flack from the left, from the right, from the center, from everybody. But I think we are in the right direction. And I appreciate everyone's concerns. I know that I've been working nonstop talking to people in my district about this plan. And that's all I really want to say, so thank you.
Thank you. Further council comments? Councilor Adams.
Thank you. I would just like to begin by saying I don't like where I have to swivel around on my seat, but I apologize for my back.
Pardon my front.
First and foremost, for the hardworking county members who have helped us along this very difficult task of coming up with a plan. It was quite an exercise, and I've said that before at other meetings. We are extremely sensitive people sitting here at this table, and as difficult as it might seem, not one of us haven't gone away from this table, from other meetings in different venues, not torn in a multitude of directions. I thank Linda for helping to guide me, because I am not an expert in any part of this. I have read, I have met with members who have much more expertise than myself, and I know we've thrown around the word many times, Stantec. It was an RFP, it was awarded, and we were then led by the hands of the expert, but not remiss of the voices of our people, including us as councillors. The meetings, many attended. No, it wasn't the number that we all would like to have seen, but we cannot diminish the fact that they were attended. Meetings were attended. I like the word that was used. Linda has said it, and several others have. It's a framework. We begin, doesn't end. Do amendments and changes come at a cost? Of course it does. It comes at an emotional cost, a physical cost. It means we have to show up at meetings when we are working. We might have to take some time off, and I know in a frail time, since a pandemic, employers are not as forgiving allowing people to take time off from work. I totally understand that. I'm one of those people. The plan, as other councillors have said, is not perfect. It cannot be perfect. We're not clones of each other. We all have our own intimate desires, needs, wishes, and we also see our future. We all do, I'm sure, very bright. Housing, as I have heard from the back of the room and basically all around the peripheral, housing is a priority. What it's going to look like and how it's going to happen, every one of us feel that very same desperation. Food security. I grow my own, raise my own animals. I know what it's like to have a garden. I know that I don't want restrictions, but I, as Councillor Enslow has shared, he will be affected, I will be affected. This isn't about putting restrictions on you. This is about creating a plan we can begin with and carry on with and try and make the amendments or adjustments as we can work together. We cannot work apart from each other. And so as much as frustration and anger can be rattled up inside of us, we know it's challenging. We feel that.
People are rolling their eyes.
Thank you. We won't all agree. And that is a place, again, that we all each have to take personal. We have to accept that sometimes we have to agree with others just to be able to have something for ourselves. I did hear the word expert used today, and that's really where I will end. We have done our very, very, very best. I ask for you to be as patient with us as we are we've gone out to these meetings and wanted to hear from you. Emails, telephone calls, meeting as Councillor Prout has said, we've met people out in parking lots. We will listen. I thank you, each one of you, for coming today. This is not an easy task. It's very difficult, and I'm so appreciative. Thanks.
Deputy Warden. Thank you. I'm going to excuse my back, please, and I'll just sort of yell at the front of the room and hope it bounces around. In reference to one of our other speakers today, I want to do a little framing here first before I get to the real meat and potatoes of the document. I've had the great privilege, sitting on council, to have so many hours that I've gone to many meetings and stood and talked to many people, and I've talked to their parking lot. That's how I met one of the residents over here. The person I met in the parking lot was not them, it was their neighbor who then put me in contact with them. And I've also had the great privilege of having been all across this country. In the 4 years I've spent in Annapolis County, it's the longest I've lived anywhere in my life since I left home. And they've been quite fantastic. It is a lovely, lovely area. So, really nice. A little onward here. This document is incredibly complex, and I've spent, as I said, it's been my great privilege to learn a lot, not just from residents, but from our staff. One of the things I've learned is that so many things can refer to other documents, like building code. So things like sewer systems means you can have a composting toilet, you can have an incinerator. If you can get it done in the building code, you're allowed to do it in the dwelling. And nothing in this document restricts that. We can't restrict that. That is a provincial document, and we're municipal. We can't supersede those things. In our most restrictive area of residential, we're allowed to have 3 dwellings on a property. And I suppose there's maybe setbacks and stuff that might complicate things. If I have a 1/8 of an acre lot, I can put 3 dwellings on it. 2 in the main unit and 1 in an accessory building. I know that because I've spent time and answered that question and asked that question. If you're in a least restrictive area, mixed use, you can't put up let's look up 4 units, I think. So you can't put up a 6-unit apartment building, really, but you can put up 4 houses.
You can only put up 1 main building.
So,
1 main.
As I've said, these are complex documents, and you need to spend a lot of time dealing with them to understand how they reference each other. So you come back to livestock. When I moved here 4 years ago, one of the things I liked was that it is rural and agricultural. It was mentioned that some of our conversation at this last Planning Advisory Committee meeting was extensive and long-winded, and not all of council was in agreement. I think we should have much more livestock allowed in our properties, much more than 25 chickens. And I stood in opposition to people, but that's fine. I think I was frustrated enough when I came home. I said to my wife, "I'm going to get one of the local farmers to put his cattle herd on my half-acre." She said I wasn't allowed to do that. Her rules, not planning rules. I did do some quick math for everybody's reference. So if we go back to our 1/8 acre lot, which is about 5,200 square feet, and let's cut off 3/4 of that for the front and side yards of the building. That leaves us with 1,300 square feet. We take 1,300 square foot backyard. We take half of that, puts us at 675 square feet, so that's 675 for our garden. We'll say 675 for chickens. If we take the 4 square feet that one of our residents, what our writers mentioned as a minimum for chickens, so let's double that. Basically, we can put lots of play in here. That's enough room for 84 3/4 chickens. So, I think 25 is way too little. And I'll even concede that 3/4 chickens we don't have half sitting back there. That's a joke. That's tough audience. That's what I have to say. I don't really see as much restrictions here when you get into it and ask the questions. Oh, that was one last thing I had. You know, back in October, I said to a number of people at planning meetings that I wasn't in any rush to pass things when it came January. I didn't mind had another time for planning as a whole. But I wasn't necessarily just going to hop on and jam it through in 2 or 3 months. If it took us 6, that's fine. You know, maybe take some financial pain from the product. And at the start of November, the main reason for that was that I didn't think the province had the political willpower to really put the thumb screws to us. And then in November, the province passed legislation that essentially gave them carte blanche authority to do anything they want in HRM with no public consultation or anything. And I said to myself, it turns out the province does have political will to do these things. I'm not saying I jumped in line. I'm still content to delay, but I'm less content to delay.
Thank you. We'll now move to next steps, please.
So after
comment on what the councillors say, or is there a period to ask them any questions? Because I'm concerned, I just would like the record to state that I'm concerned that the public here has voiced their opinion very loudly, that we have an issue with the livestock and restrictions to our housing, like what we can build. And I'm also going to say that this has not been brought up very much, but the restrictions to home occupations. And we've heard from majority of the councillors here, and all I hear is stalling because I haven't heard them address one of these concerns, not once, except for I do appreciate the last gentleman that he does have concern for our ability to raise whole foods very much. But, you know, we have a lot of other issues. How come this council can't sit here and look us straight in the face and say, okay, we're acknowledging that there's issues with the restrictions to the building permits, to the home occupations, and to the livestock, and we're going to correct this before we move on to the next meeting. I think it's very fair that one of you makes the motion that this happens right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So after this public hearing, Municipal Council may hold second and final reading of their intention to adopt the documents, after which we are required to send 4 copies to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their ultimate approval. Once we receive approval from the province, an advertisement will be placed in the local paper notifying the public of the adoption of the documents, and the date of the publication will be the effective date of the documents. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just a little boy from Cape Breton. Being a councillor, and I've been a councillor since 2012, and being a warden for the last 2 years of this term, I need to tell you that I've learned a lot. And I learned more here today. I thank those who spoke to the subject. I thank those who gave reasoned opinions and suggestions, all of which will be considered by council. In brackets, I would like to suggest that you do all you can to find some way to read, listen, watch what council does, and give us your viewpoints. We do consider them. I've seen many of you at the meetings we held, 3 dozen of them over the past 2 years. I've had a few telephone calls, which were rather disjointed and jagged, and I hold the phone up so that my wife can hear as well, and so she learns about the caller in the same way that I do. But thank you very, very much. And as I said, I'm a little boy from Cape Breton, and I don't say anything I don't mean. We value your participation. Please keep it up. Meeting is adjourned.